You know what stings most about being the family joke? It's not the laughter itself, it's the moment right before when you catch that flash of recognition in their eyes, that split second where they see you as human before deciding you're not worth the courtesy. I saw that look in my brother Derek's eyes at last year's 4th of July barbecue right before he announced to 43 relatives that I'd finally learned to tie my shoes without instructions. I was 37 years old, standing there with potato salad on a paper plate, watching my father pound Derek's back and wheeze with laughter, while my mother smiled that tight smile that meant she was embarrassed by association. That was the moment I started keeping notes. Growing up, there was this unspoken hierarchy in the Mitchell family. Dad sat at the top like some suburban king. Derek occupied the prince's throne at his right hand, and I existed somewhere between the furniture and the family dog noticed mainly when I was in the way. Derek was 3 years older, 6 inches taller, and infinitely more valuable in the currency our father traded in machismo, quick comebacks, and the ability to make other men feel small. I learned early that defending myself only made things worse. Try to explain why something hurt. Stop being so sensitive, Tommy. Point out the cruelty. Learn to take a joke. Stand up for myself. Look who finally grew a pair. Too bad they're still baby size. That last one was Derek's favorite, delivered at my wedding reception, while my wife Sarah held my hand under the table hard enough to leave marks. The thing about systematic humiliation is that it trains you to become invisible, and invisible people see everything. I watched Derek for decades, really watched him. I saw how he'd pocket Dad's credit card after borrowing it for gas. I noticed the way he'd adjust Mom's signature on birthday checks before mobile deposits. Small things, petty things, but patterns emerge when you're paying attention. Sarah understood before I did. Your family's not just toxic. She told me one night after a particularly brutal Easter dinner where Derek had spent 20 minutes explaining to my boss who Dad had invited without telling me why I'd never had the balls for real work. She was sitting on our bed still in her dress, mascara smudged from trying not to cry in front of them. They're actually criminal, Tom. The stuff Derek does, that's theft, wire fraud, elder abuse when it comes to your mom's accounts. It's just Derek being Derek. I said the words automatic, 37 years of conditioning speaking for me. No, she said, and the firmness in her voice made me look up. It's Derek being a criminal, and your father enabling it, and you accepting it because they've trained you to think you deserve it. She was right, of course. Sarah usually is. She's an accountant, sees the world in columns that have to balance, and our family ledger had been crooked since before I could remember. But knowing something and doing something about it are different beasts entirely, and I'd grown comfortable in my designated role as the family disappointment. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. It was one of those fake spring days in March where the sun tricks you into thinking winter's over before the next freeze hits. Sarah and I had driven to my parents' house for Dad's birthday dinner command performance, as Derek called it, though the command only ever seemed to apply to me. Derek could skip Christmas for a ski trip, but God forbid I missed Dad's birthday. I'd parked my SUV, a 2018 Honda CR-V, that Sarah and I had saved 3 years to buy in the driveway, behind Derek's lifted Ram truck. It was dusty but reliable, exactly the kind of practical choice that Derek loved to mock. Tommy's got himself a soccer mom car, he'd announced when we'd first bought it. Perfect for a guy with no balls and no kids. Dinner was the usual production. Mom had made pot roast that Derek complained about while eating 3 servings. Dad held court about his glory days at the plant before soft kids like Tommy ruined American manufacturing. Derek told the story again about the time in high school when I'd thrown up during a presentation, adding new embellishments that included me crying and possibly wetting myself, neither of which had happened. "Remember that Tommy?" Derek asked, grinning across the table. "Mr. Henderson had to call the janitor. The whole class had to evacuate." "That's not how it happened," I said quietly. "Oh, Tommy's got a different version." Dad leaned back, amused. "Let's hear it then. Tell us how you were actually the hero of the story." I didn't respond. I never did anymore. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, her wedding ring pressing into my palm, a reminder that someone in this room actually chose me. After dinner, Derek followed me out to my car. I thought maybe for once he wanted to talk like brothers do in Hallmark movies, share something real, connect over something besides my humiliation. Instead, he leaned against his truck and watched me load the leftovers Mom had insisted we take. "You know what your problem is, Tommy," he said, not really asking. You never learned to take a joke. Everything's so serious with you. Maybe I'd laugh more if anything was actually funny. I said, closing the hatch harder than necessary. Derek's expression darkened. See that attitude right there? That's why Dad thinks you're a disappointment. That's why everyone knows you're the family failure. I'm not a failure, I said. I have a job, a house, a wife who loves me. A data entry job, Derek interrupted. A house you can barely afford. A wife who probably fantasizes about what a real man feels like. Something snapped in me then. Not violently, not explosively, just a quiet breaking of whatever restraint had held me back for 37 years. At least I didn't have to steal from Mom's purse to buy my wife's engagement ring. The silence stretched between us like a held breath. Derek's face went through several colors, white, red, purple, before settling on something dangerous. Yeah, well, what did you just say? And you heard me. $2,000 transferred from her savings. I saw the statements. Derek stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the beer on his breath. You don't know what you're talking about. December 15th, 3 years ago. Wells Fargo transfer account ending in 4782. You changed the memo to Christmas gift, but Mom never saw it because you handle their online banking. His fist came up, and for a moment I thought this was it. We were finally going to have the fight that had been building since we were kids. Instead, he laughed low and mean. You've been spying on me, Jesus, Tommy. That's pathetic even for you. He turned toward his truck, then stopped. You know what, you need a lesson in minding your own business. I didn't think much of the threat. Derek had been threatening me with lessons my whole life. Lessons in being a man, lessons in respect, lessons in knowing my place. They usually amounted to public humiliation and nothing more. I got in my Honda and drove home, Sarah asking what Derek had wanted me saying the usual, because how do you explain 37 years of the usual? The car started acting up 3 days later. First, it was just sluggish acceleration when I left for work Monday morning. I figured maybe bad gas from that sketchy station by the highway. By Tuesday, the engine was sputtering. Wednesday, it was bucking like a mechanical bull every time I pressed the accelerator. Thursday morning, it wouldn't start at all. The mechanic at Jensen's Auto was a guy named Carl who'd been fixing cars since before I was born. He had those permanently grease-stained hands that honest mechanics earn and a way of explaining problems that didn't make you feel stupid for not knowing. Someone put something in your gas tank, he said, leading me around to where he'd dropped the tank for cleaning. Looks like soda, Coke, or Pepsi based on the residue, sugar, and phosphoric acid. Gums up everything, corrodes the fuel system. You're looking at fuel pump, fuel injectors, filters, maybe catalytic converter, if you've been driving it like this. How much? I asked, already knowing it would hurt. 3,000 minimum. Could go up to 5 if we find more damage. I stood there staring at the mechanic's bay at my violated Honda up on the lift and felt something cold settle in my stomach. Is there any way to prove what was put in there? Like specifically, Carl gave me a curious look. I can test the residue, tell you exactly what it was if you need it for insurance. Why, just document everything, please. Take pictures, keep samples if you can. He nodded slowly. Someone did this on purpose. Yeah, I said, someone did. Sarah was angrier than I'd ever seen her when I told her that night. She paced our kitchen, her heels clicking on the linoleum we'd been meaning to replace for 2 years, still in her work clothes because she'd come home to find me sitting at the table with Carl's estimate and a growing certainty about who'd done this. We're calling the police, she said, and telling them that I think my brother vandalized my car because we had an argument. Because you caught him stealing. She slammed her hand on the counter. Tom, this is escalation. This is criminal destruction of property. This is Derek, I said quietly. And the police won't care about a family squabble. You know who Dad golfs with half the police force. Sarah stopped pacing and looked at me. Really looked at me the way she had on our wedding day, the way she had when we decided to try for kids before the miscarriage ended. That dream the way she did when she was about to say something that would change everything. Then we handle this ourselves, she said. But we handle it right. Document everything. Build a case, and then we end this. How do you warn? I don't know yet. But Tom, honey, you've been taking this for 37 years. We've been married for 8 of those years, and I've watched it eat at you. I've watched you get smaller every time we have to see them. I've held you while you've thrown up from anxiety before family dinners. This ends now. It's just a car. No, she said firmly. It's not just a car. It's 37 years of Derek and your father treating you like you're worthless. It's theft and vandalism and emotional abuse. It's our savings, Tom. $3,000 we don't have because Derek decided you needed a lesson. She came around the table, knelt beside my chair, took my hands. Baby, you are worth so much more than they've ever let you believe. And we're going to prove it. That night I started my real documentation. Not just mental notes anymore, but a proper file. Sarah showed me how to organize it like she would for an audit, chronological, categorized, cross-referenced. We started with the car. Carl had taken photos of everything, bless him. The contaminated fuel he'd drained, the corroded fuel pump, the gummed-up injectors. He'd even tested the residue Coca-Cola Classic, he said, based on the specific sugar and acid composition. I'd laughed at that bitterly. Of course Derek would use name-brand soda to destroy my car. Generic wouldn't be good enough for a Mitchell man's revenge. We need more, Sarah said, spreading the photos on our dining room table. This proves someone vandalized the car, but not who. She was right. We needed to put Derek at the scene holding the smoking gun, or in this case, the dripping Coke bottle. But Derek was smarter than people gave him credit for smart, in that cruel, cunning way that helped him navigate 39 years of consequences-free living. Then I remembered something. The gas cap, I said suddenly. When I filled up that Sunday after dinner, the gas cap was loose. I thought I'd just forgotten to tighten it, but you never forget, Sarah finished. You check 3 times. It's one of your things. It was true. One of my many things. As Derek called them, the little obsessive habits that made me Tommy the Turtle, slow and scared of his own shadow. But those habits meant I knew with absolute certainty that I'd tightened that gas cap the last time I'd filled up. So he did it at your parents' house, Sarah said, while we were at dinner, or right after when he followed me out. Are there cameras? Honey, one. I shook my head. Dad doesn't believe in them. Says a man protects his own property without hiding behind technology. Sarah snorted. Of course he does. Okay, what about Derek's purchase? He had to buy the Coke somewhere. He's not stupid enough to use a credit card for something like that. No, Sarah agreed. But he's arrogant enough to not think it matters. She was right about that too. Derek's arrogance was like armor. It protected him from consequences because he genuinely believed they didn't apply to him. Rules were for people like me, Tommy the Turtle, too scared to cross the street without checking both ways twice. The next day, while Sarah was at work and I was supposed to be working from home, thank God for remote data entry, I did something I'd never done before. I investigated my brother. I started with social media. Derek was a chronic oversharer, posting everything from his breakfast to his grievances with liberal snowflakes ruining America. His Facebook was a goldmine of self-incrimination. There, posted at 11:47 p.m. on the night he vandalized my car, was a photo of him at a 7-Eleven holding up a big gulp and a bottle of Coke. Late night munchies, the caption read, about to teach someone about respect. My hands shook as I screenshotted everything. The timestamp, the location tag, he'd forgotten to turn off the comments from his buddies laughing about Tommy learning his place. One of them, a guy named Brad, who'd peaked in high school with Derek, had written, "About time someone taught that pussy a lesson." Derek had responded with 3 laughing emojis and, "Already handled, bro." But I needed more. One Facebook post wasn't enough to prove anything beyond Derek being an asshole, which wasn't exactly breaking news. So I kept digging. I went back through years of family photos, videos, documents I'd saved. Looking for patterns, Sarah called it. Building a profile. It sounds crazy, spending a Tuesday afternoon cataloging every instance of humiliation, every joke that wasn't every time money went missing and Derek just happened to have new toys. But patterns emerged. There was the time Mom's emergency fund, $300 in cash she kept in a coffee can, disappeared the same week Derek bought new rims for his truck. The time Dad's credit card was charged $800 at Best Buy for a TV that he ended up in Derek's apartment. The weekend Mom and Dad were out of town, and Derek threw a party that somehow resulted in Mom's jewelry box being misplaced until Derek found it a month later, minus her grandmother's ring. Each incident isolated was explainable. Derek was forgetful. Derek made mistakes. Derek was just being Derek. But together they painted a picture of a 39-year-old man who'd been stealing from his parents for decades, enabled by a father who saw theft as strength and a mother, too, beaten down to object. Tom, Sarah's voice startled me. I hadn't heard her come home. Honey, what is all this? I looked at the dining room table now covered in papers, photos, printed screenshots, bank statements I'd managed to piece together from Mom's reluctant mentions of money troubles. It looked like a detective's murder board, except the crime was slower, a death by 1,000 cuts over decades. Evidence, I said. Sarah picked up a photo from Derek's high school graduation. He had his arm around my neck in what looked like brotherly affection, but was actually a chokehold he'd maintained until the photographer said cheese, and I was turning purple. Jesus, she whispered. Tom, this is extensive. There's more, I said, showing her the Facebook post. He basically confessed. Sarah studied the screen, then looked at me with something I didn't recognize in her eyes. Pride, maybe respect. What's the plan? I don't know yet, I admitted, but the family reunion is in 6 weeks. The big one. I nodded. Every 5 years, the Mitchell family held what Dad called the gathering of the clan. Relatives came from 7 states, 3 generations of Mitchells pretending we were something special, something worth celebrating. This year would be the 40th anniversary held at Riverside Park's main pavilion, with probably 70 people attending. That's a lot of witnesses, Sarah said carefully. Yeah, I agreed. It is. She was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her laptop. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Legal, above board, unimpeachable, she started typing. First thing, we document the current vandalism properly. Police report, insurance claim the works. But you said the police won't care. They won't arrest Derek, no. But they'll file the report. Create an official record. Paper trails matter, Tom. So that's what we did. I filed a police report for vandalism. The officer, a tired-looking woman named Daniels, took my statement with professional disinterest until I showed her Carl's documentation. Coke in the gas tank, she looked up. That's specific. Usually it's sugar or sand. The mechanic said it was definitely Coca-Cola. He tested it. Any idea who might have done this? I hesitated, then said, I have suspicions, but no proof yet. She gave me a long look. Domestic situation. Something like that. Word of advice. She lowered her voice. Document everything. Every interaction, every threat, every incident. Build your case before you make accusations. And Mr. Mitchell, be careful. Domestic situations can escalate quickly. I thought about telling her it had been escalating for 37 years, but I just nodded and took my case number. The insurance claim was next. Our deductible was $1,000 we couldn't spare, but Sarah insisted. Paper trails, she repeated. We're building a wall of documentation brick by brick. While I dealt with insurance, Sarah dove into research that would have impressed a forensic accountant. She found things I'd never even suspected. Property records showing Derek had put offers on houses he couldn't afford on his salary. Loan applications listing assets he didn't have. 3 separate LLCs registered in Nevada that seemed to exist only on paper. Your brother's not just a thief, she said one evening, looking up from her laptop with dark circles under her eyes. He's running multiple fraud schemes. And Tom, I think your dad knows. She showed me what she'd found. Property transfers between Dad and Derek that made no sense, loans co-signed, and then mysteriously paid off. Derek listed as a consultant for Dad's buddy's construction company, despite never consulting on anything except how to drink beer. This is, I trailed off, overwhelmed. Criminal, Sarah finished. This is criminal conspiracy, Tom. Tax fraud, wire fraud, elder abuse, if we can prove he's taking from your mom without her knowledge. We can't prove any of it, not really. Not yet, she said. But we have 6 weeks. Those 6 weeks became an education in everything I'd never wanted to know about my family. Sarah and I worked like a 2-person investigation unit. She handled the financial forensics while I did the field work, which sounds more exciting than it was. Field work meant visiting the 7-Eleven where Derek had posted his photo where the night clerk remembered him because dude bought like 6 bottles of Coke and kept laughing about teaching somebody respect. It meant talking to Mom's hairdresser, who mentioned Mom had been worried about money lately, couldn't afford her usual color treatment. She said there had been some unexpected expenses, but you know your mother never wants to burden anyone. It meant driving by Derek's apartment and noting the new motorcycle in his designated spot, a Harley Davidson that cost more than my car repairs times 10. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Mom herself. She called me on a Thursday afternoon, voice shaky. Tommy, can you come over? Just you, not Sarah. And don't tell Derek or your father. I found her in the kitchen surrounded by paper bank statements crying. Mom, I sat down carefully like she might spook. What's wrong? I think I'm going crazy, she said. I must be, because money keeps disappearing and I can't remember spending it. What kind of money? Yes, there were different amounts. 50 here, 200 there. But Tommy last week, $3,000. Gone. Your father says I must have forgotten that I probably bought something online, but I didn't. I know I didn't. $3,000, the exact amount my car repairs cost. Mom, I said carefully, have you talked to Derek about this? Her face changed a flash of something fear before settling back into confusion. Derek handles the online banking for us. He says everything's fine, but Tommy, I looked at the statements. The paper ones I get mailed. They don't match what Derek shows me on the computer. Can I see? She hesitated, lifetime of loyalty to her golden boy warring with the evidence in front of her. Finally, she pushed the statements toward me. It was all there. Transfers Derek had made labeled as things like mom shopping or dad golf, but the dates were wrong. Dad had been in the hospital for his knee when one of his supposed golf withdrawals happened. Mom had been with me and Sarah when she'd allegedly spent $500 at Target. Mom, I said gently, Derek's been stealing from you. No, the word was automatic defensive. Derek wouldn't. He's successful. He doesn't need our money. Mom, his salary is $42,000 a year. How do you think he affords a $50,000 truck? The motorcycle, the apartment that costs $2,000 a month. She was quiet for a long time, staring at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense, something that didn't mean her favorite son was a thief. Your father can't know, she finally whispered. Mamrana, Mom. No, Tommy, please, it would kill him. Derek's his. You know what Derek is to him. I did know. Derek was the son Dad had wanted, the one who validated every sexist joke, every cruel prank, every belief that kindness was weakness and cruelty was strength. Mom, he put coke in my gas tank. Cost me $3,000 to fix. The same $3,000 that went missing from your account. She looked up sharply. You can prove that. I'm working on it. She stood up, then moved to the window that looked out on the backyard where Derek and I had played as kids, where Derek had broken my arm accidentally during a game of touch football that was never actually touched when Derek played. The reunion, she said quietly. Your father's been planning his speech for months. 40 years of Mitchell family tradition. He wants to announce Derek as his successor officially. Wants to hand over the family business. What family business? Dad's retired. The rental properties, the investments. Everything Derek's been managing for the last 5 years. She turned to look at me. Everything Derek's been stealing from for the last 5 years. Mom, we have to. I'll handle it, she said, and there was steel in her voice I'd never heard before. At the reunion, publicly. Your father cares about appearances more than anything. If it's public, he can't sweep it under the rug. Can't make it disappear like he's made everything else disappear. Mom, I don't think. Tommy. She came over, took my hands. Hers were soft, age trembling slightly. I've let this go on too long. The way they treat you, the way I've let them treat you. I was so afraid of losing them that I lost you instead. You barely visit. Sarah looks at me like I'm complicit, and she's right. I am. Mom, I kept telling myself it was just boys being boys, that Derek would grow out of it, that your father would see your worth eventually. But Tommy, you're 37 years old, and last Christmas, Derek gave you a children's puzzle as a joke, and everyone laughed, and I laughed too, and I'm so ashamed. She was crying again, and I didn't know what to do with this version of my mother, this woman, who saw clearly for maybe the first time. Let me help, she said. Let me finally be your mother instead of just Derek's. I drove home in a daze, found Sarah in the kitchen making dinner, told her everything. She listened while chopping vegetables, the knife steady and rhythmic processing. Your mom's going to help. She says she will. Do you believe her? I thought about it. Yeah, I do. Something's different. She's awake. Sarah nodded slowly. Then we adjust the plan. We have an inside ally now. That changes things. Over the next 3 weeks, Mom became someone I'd never known she could be calculating. She gathered documents with the dedication of a forensic accountant, copied files. When Dad was golfing, took photos of Derek's fraudulent paperwork when he left his laptop open. She even started recording conversations on her phone, catching Derek in lie after lie about where money was going. I should have been a spy, she told me during one of our secret meetings at a Starbucks halfway between our houses. I'm good at this. Mom, this is dangerous. If Derek finds out, what's he going to do? Tommy steal from me? Lie to me, treat me like I'm stupid. She laughed bitterly. He's been doing that for years. The only difference is now I'm documenting it. 2 weeks before the reunion, Sarah made a discovery that changed everything. Tom, she called from the home office, voice strange. You need to see this. She'd been going through property records trying to trace some of Derek's shell companies when she'd found something unexpected. Dad's will filed with the county after his minor heart attack 5 years ago. Public records, Sarah explained, because Dad had set up a trust. Look at the beneficiaries, she said. I read through the legal language until I found it. The trust was split 3 ways. Mom got 50%, Derek got 35%, and I got 15%. But there was a clause buried in subsection after subsection of legalese. What am I looking at? Sarah pointed to a paragraph. Moral turpitude clause. If any beneficiary is convicted of a crime involving theft, fraud, or fiduciary breach, their share is redistributed to the remaining beneficiaries. So if Derek is convicted, his 35% gets split between you and your mom. Sarah pulled up another document. But more importantly, look at this. The trust already exists. It's been active for 5 years. Derek's been managing it as trustee. So, so trustees have a fiduciary duty. Every dollar he's stolen while acting as trustee isn't just theft, it's breach of fiduciary duty. It's a felony, Tom, and it triggers the moral turpitude clause. I stared at the screen, understanding dawning. He's been stealing from his own inheritance, while simultaneously disqualifying himself from receiving it, Sarah confirmed. Your dad thought he was being clever putting Derek in charge, but he actually created the perfect trap. Does Derek know about the clause? I doubt it. Your dad probably didn't think it was important. Why would the golden child ever commit a crime? The irony was perfect. Dad's blind faith in Derek, his absolute certainty that his chosen son could do no wrong, had created the very weapon that would destroy him. If Derek had just been patient, just waited for his inheritance, instead of stealing it piece by piece, he would have been set for life. Instead, his greed and arrogance had built his own gallows. We need a lawyer, I said. Already called one, Sarah said. A state attorney named Jennifer Chen. She specializes in trust fraud. We have an appointment tomorrow. Jennifer Chen's office was nothing like I'd expected. No dark wood and leather chairs, just a bright space with modern furniture, and a woman who looked younger than me but spoke with the authority of someone who'd seen every possible family betrayal. This is quite a case, she said after reviewing our documentation for an hour. The trust fraud alone is enough for criminal charges, but the pattern of theft, the elder abuse aspect, the conspiracy elements, if your father is involved, this could be significant. We don't want to destroy my family. I said the words automatic. Mr. Mitchell, Jennifer said carefully, your family is already destroyed. The question is whether you want to rebuild it on truth or let it collapse under the weight of lies. What would you recommend, Hassan? Sunlight, she said immediately. Secrets like these thrive in darkness. Your plan to address this at the reunion is actually brilliant. Public accountability makes it harder for anyone to sweep this under the rug or intimidate you into silence. But should we involve the police? Eventually, yes. But I'd suggest a different approach. Document everything at the reunion, record it, if possible. Get Derek to admit what he's done in front of witnesses. Then give him a choice, make full restitution, and step down as trustee or face criminal charges. You think he'll admit it? Jennifer smiled. In my experience, men like your brother can't help but brag about their cleverness when they think they've won. If he believes he's humiliating you one last time, he'll probably confess everything. And if my father interferes, really, then he becomes part of the criminal complaint. Conspiracy to commit fraud, accessory after the fact, possible RICO charges if we can prove a pattern of racketeering. RICO. I knew that term from movies' mob stuff. The idea that my family's dysfunction could rise to that level was surreal. One more thing, Jennifer said. You'll want witnesses who aren't family, people whose testimony would be considered unbiased. The reunion will have 70 people. Extended family, dads, business associates, family, friends. Perfect. The more witnesses, the harder it is to deny or minimize later. She handed me a business card. Call me immediately after the reunion. We'll want to move fast once everything's in the open. The week before the reunion was torture. Derek called twice to remind me to dress decent for once and to mock me for RSVPing yes to bringing a +1. Finally hired someone to pretend to be your girlfriend. Sarah's coming, I said evenly. Right, Sarah. I forgot you were still married. Figured she'd have traded up by now. I didn't rise to the bait. I couldn't. I had to be invisible for one more week, had to be Tommy the Turtle, slow and steady, and no threat to anyone. If Derek suspected anything, he'd destroy evidence, move money, maybe even skip town. Mom was the real actor, though. She helped Dad plan his speech about Derek taking over the family legacy, smiled when Derek bragged about his business acumen, even complimented his new motorcycle when he drove it over to show off. Beautiful bike, she'd said, running her hand over the chrome. Must have cost a fortune. Nah, Derek had said, grinning. Got a great deal. Basically stole it. Mom had smiled and said, you always were clever with money. I'd watched from the kitchen window, saw the way her hand trembled slightly as she touched the bike that had been bought with her money, her retirement fund, her security. But her smile never wavered. 3 days before the reunion, Sarah and I did a final review of everything we'd compiled. 2 bankers' boxes of documentation, cross-referenced and organized. Financial records, photographs, recordings, witness statements from the mechanic, the 7-Eleven clerk, Mom's hairdresser, the Facebook confession, the trust documents, the pattern of theft going back 15 years. It's enough, Sarah said, closing the last folder. More than enough. I feel like I'm going to throw up, I admitted. You probably will, she said matter-of-factly. But you'll do it anyway. You know why. Why, Andy? Because you're not Tommy the Turtle. You never were. You're the guy who documented 15 years of crime while being gaslit and abused. You're the guy who protected his mom even when she didn't protect you. You're the guy who chose justice over revenge law, over violence, truth over comfortable lies. I don't feel like that guy. No, she agreed. You feel like throwing up, but you'll stand up there anyway in front of 70 people and you'll tell the truth. And Derek and your father will finally face consequences. And maybe your family can start to heal. Or it'll explode completely. Then it explodes, Sarah said simply. But at least you'll be free. The morning of the reunion, I woke up at 4 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. I lay there listening to Sarah breathe, thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Derek could get violent. Dad could have a heart attack. The family could turn on me entirely, as circle the wagons around Derek like they always had. But then I thought about the $3,000 in repairs money we'd scraped together by emptying our emergency fund and putting off fixing our own AC unit through a brutal July. I thought about Mom crying over her bank statements, convinced she was losing her mind. I thought about 37 years of being told I was worthless, weak, a disappointment, a joke. I thought about the moral turpitude clause, Derek's own greed creating his downfall. By the time Sarah woke up, I was ready. Not confident, not fearless, just ready. Ready to stop hiding, ready to stop accepting, ready to stop being invisible. How are you feeling? She asked, her hand finding mine. Like David about to face Goliath with a folder full of receipts instead of a slingshot. She laughed. Biblical, I like it. Though technically you have 2 folders, and a laptop with everything backed up, and a lawyer on speed dial, and me. And you? I agreed, squeezing her hand. That's the most important part. We dressed carefully. Sarah in a professional but approachable dress, me in khakis and a button-down that said, responsible adult, rather than Tommy the Turtle. I packed the documentation in a briefcase I'd bought specifically for this purpose, something that looked official, serious. You look like an accountant, Sarah said approvingly, or an FBI agent. I feel like I'm going to crawl out of my skin. That's normal. Remember the plan. We'd rehearsed it dozens of times. Wait until Dad's speech about Derek taking over. Let him fully commit to the narrative of Derek as successful businessman and devoted son. Then stand up, ask to add something to Dad's tribute. Play it like I'm finally acknowledging Derek's superiority, ready to publicly submit to the family hierarchy. And if Derek gets violent, Hakina, we have 70 witnesses and 911 on speed dial. Plus your cousins from your mom's side will be there. The ones who never liked Derek. That was true. Mom's family had always been suspicious of Dad and Derek's dynamic, especially Aunt Linda, who'd once pulled me aside at Christmas and said, your brother's a snake and your father's a snake charmer, but you're the only one in that house with a soul. The drive to Riverside Park took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Other cars were already arriving, relatives I hadn't seen in years, parking next to each other, kids running toward the playground, the smell of charcoal already starting from the grills Dad had insisted on hiring a company to manage. Professional BBQ, he'd said. None of that potluck garbage. This is the Mitchell reunion. We do things right. Derek's truck was already there, parked prominently near the pavilion, like a monument to toxic masculinity. Dad's Cadillac was beside it, the two vehicles looking like a statement about what the Mitchell men valued. I parked our Honda repaired, but somehow still feeling violated at the far end of the lot. You don't have to hide, Sarah said. I'm not hiding. I'm maintaining sight lines to the exit. She didn't argue. We both knew that despite all our preparation, all our documentation, this could still go very wrong. The pavilion was already half full when we arrived. Dad was holding court near the grills, Derek beside him, both of them with beers, despite it being barely noon. Mom was at a picnic table, arranging centerpieces she'd spent weeks making fake flowers and photo collages of Mitchell family history that carefully edited out most of my presence. Tommy, cousin Michelle, waved us over. She was from Mom's side, had always been kind. Sarah, I haven't seen you guys in forever. We made small talk, me fighting the urge to check my watch every 30 seconds. More relatives arrived, the pavilion filling up. Dad's business friends, guys who'd worked at the plant with him, their wives who still did their hair like it was 1987. Derek's high school buddies, the ones who'd never left town, never evolved past 18. And through it all, Derek performed. He was the perfect son, helping Dad with the grills, charming the aunts, play fighting with the younger cousins in that way that looked fun, but always ended with someone crying. He caught my eye once, grinned, and made a drinking motion, mocking me for some incident 15 years ago when I'd gotten sick at a family wedding. Breathe, Sarah whispered, her hand on my back. By 2 o'clock, everyone had arrived. 73 people I counted, all here to celebrate 40 years of Mitchell family reunions, a tradition Dad talked about like it was the Mayflower Compact. The food was served, conversations flowing, kids sticky with watermelon juice. I picked at a burger stomach, too knotted to eat. Sarah chatted with my aunts, deflecting their questions about when we'd have kids with practiced ease. Mom kept glancing at me, little nervous looks that I worried Derek would notice. Then at 3:30, Dad stood up and clinked his beer bottle with a knife. Attention, everyone, attention. The pavilion gradually quieted, everyone turning toward the makeshift stage area Dad had designated near the head table. 40 years. Dad began, his voice carrying that plant foreman authority he'd never really let go of. 40 years of Mitchell family reunions? My father started this tradition when I was Derek's age, and now here we are, 3 generations strong. Applause, I clapped, too mechanical, automatic. Now you all know I'm not one for speeches. Dad continued, which was a lie he loved. Speeches loved being the center of attention. But this is a special occasion, not just because it's our 40th, but because I have an announcement. Here it comes, I thought. My hand found the briefcase handle. As many of you know, I've been blessed in my retirement with some successful investments. Real estate, some business, ventures, a little of this and that. Chuckles from the audience. And for the last 5 years, Derek here has been helping me manage it all. Derek stepped forward, that practiced, humble smile that fooled everyone who didn't know better. Well, Dad continued, I'm not getting any younger. 73 this year, can you believe it? And it's time to pass the torch. So I'm officially announcing that Derek will be taking over full management of all Mitchell family enterprises and investments. Applause again, louder this time. Derek raised his beer, accepting congratulations like a king accepting tribute. Derek's proven himself, Dad went on. He's smart, capable, a real Mitchell man. He's taken what I built and made it even better. The family's in good hands. Speech. Someone called out, probably Brad, Derek's high school buddy. Derek stepped forward, radiating confidence. Well, I don't have Dad's way with words. He began another lie. But I want to say how honored I am to carry on the Mitchell legacy. Dad taught me everything, how to be strong, how to be smart, how to take care of family. I felt Sarah's hand squeeze mine. And I want to thank Mom, Derek continued, for always believing in me, for trusting me with everything. Mom's smile was frozen plastic. The Mitchell family is about strength, Derek said, warming to his theme. It's about taking what's yours, protecting what matters, and never apologizing for success. Some people might not understand that. Some people might think we're too harsh, too demanding. But those people, his eyes found mine. Those people don't understand what it takes to be a Mitchell man. A few chuckles, uncomfortable ones. Everyone knew he was talking about me. So here's to 40 more years. Derek raised his beer again. To the Mitchell legacy, I stood up. The movement was sudden enough that people turned. Derek stopped mid-toast, his smile faltering for just a second before returning full force. Tommy, you want to say something? The mockery in his voice was barely concealed. That's a first. More uncomfortable laughter. I picked up the briefcase, walked toward the front. My legs felt disconnected from my body like I was floating. Actually, I said, surprised my voice was steady, I do want to say something about the Mitchell legacy. Dad looked confused but amused. Derek's smile widened. He thought this was it, Tommy finally acknowledging his place publicly, submitting to the natural order. 40 years is a long time. I began setting the briefcase on the picnic table. Long enough to build traditions, long enough to create myths, long enough to hide some pretty dark truths. The atmosphere shifted. Dad's amusement faded. Derek's smile became fixed. See, when Derek talks about the Mitchell legacy, he's right. It is about taking what's yours. He's been taking what's Mom's for 15 years. Silence, dead silence. Tommy, Dad's voice was warning. This isn't the time. When is the time, Dad? I opened the briefcase, pulled out the first folder. When Derek's stolen everything, when Mom's retirement is gone, when the trust you set up to protect the family wealth has been emptied by the very person you put in charge of it. What the hell are you talking about? Derek stepped forward. Are you drunk? March 15th. I said, pulling out a bank statement. $3,000 transferred from Mom's account to yours. Labeled Mom Shopping. Mom was with me and Sarah that day. We have receipts from the restaurant where we had lunch while you were supposedly shopping for her. That's March 18th. I continued, pulling out another document. You bought a Harley Davidson. $43,000. Your salary is $42,000 a year before taxes. Want to explain the math? Derek's face was reddening. You don't know anything about my finances. Actually, I do. I pulled out the trust documents. Because as trustee of Dad's trust, your finances are supposed to be transparent. Fiduciary duty, it's called. And you've breached it, repeatedly. This is ridiculous, Dad said, but his voice was less certain. Derek, tell him. Oh, he'll tell you something, I said. He always does. Like when he told you I crashed your car in high school when really he did and needed someone to blame. Or when he told you I stole from the register at your buddy's hardware store when really he needed to cover up his own theft. Those are lies. Derek stepped closer, fists clenched. Are they? I pulled out my phone, found the recording Mom had made. Her voice filled the pavilion, Derek clearly audible. The old man's too stupid to check the statements. And Mom, she can barely use email. I could drain the whole thing and they'd never know. Gasps from the crowd. Aunt Linda stood up, looking between Derek and my parents with horror. That's fake, Derek said, but his voice was shaking. That's Tommy's making that up. He's June 2nd last year. I continued, relentless now. You charged $8,000 to the trust for property maintenance. The property in question was your apartment. The maintenance was your new home theater system. I have the receipts. I laid them out one by one on the picnic table. The crowd had pressed closer, people reading over each other's shoulders. September 10th, I continued. You sold Mom's mother's jewelry, the pieces she thought were lost. $12,000 at Gold and Silver Exchange on Maple Street. They still had the security footage. They emailed it to me. I opened my laptop, turned it toward the crowd. There was Derek, clear as day, sliding jewelry across a counter, taking cash. Mom made a sound soft and broken. Several aunts moved to comfort her. This is insane, Derek said, but he was backing up now. You're all going to believe Tommy the Turtle, the family failure. January of this year, I said, my voice stronger now. You transferred $50,000 from the trust to an LLC you created in Nevada, Mitchell Management Services. It doesn't manage anything. It's just a shell to hide stolen money. How do you know about that? Derek's mask finally slipped, showing real fear. Because I'm not stupid, I said simply. I never was. I was just invisible. And invisible people see everything. Derek, Dad's voice was hollow. Tell me he's lying. Derek looked at Dad, then at the crowd of relatives, his high school buddies, Dad's business associates, all staring at him, all waiting. And then he laughed. It was an ugly sound, bitter and mean. You want to know the truth, Derek said. Fine, yeah, I took money. So what, I've been managing everything for 5 years while Dad played golf and pretended he was still important. I've been taking care of Mom while she forgot her own name half the time. I deserve compensation. That's not compensation, Aunt Linda said loudly. That's theft. It's what I was owed, Derek shouted, for being the only real man in this family, for carrying the Mitchell name while Tommy played with spreadsheets and cried about his feelings. You put coke in my gas tank, I said quietly. Cost me $3,000. The exact amount you stole from Mom that week. Derek's grin was vicious. Prove it. I pulled out Carl's documentation, the photos, the test results. Then I pulled out Derek's own Facebook post printed large enough for everyone to see. The Coke bottle, the timestamp, the location, the comments about teaching me respect. You confessed, I said, on social media, because you're so arrogant you never thought there'd be consequences. Derek lunged at me then, but he'd forgotten something. The cousins from Mom's side, the ones who'd never liked him. Two of them, both bigger than Derek, caught him before he could reach me. Let me go, Derek struggled. This is family business. Not anymore, I said. I pulled out the final document, the one Jennifer Chen had helped me prepare. This is a cease and desist letter, Derek. You're removed as trustee effective immediately. You have 30 days to return all stolen funds or criminal charges will be filed. You can't do that. Actually, I can. See, there's this thing called a moral turpitude clause in Dad's trust. Crime involving theft or fraud means automatic disqualification as beneficiary. You've been stealing from your own inheritance, Derek, and now it's gone. The silence was complete. Even the kids on the playground had stopped sensing the adult drama. Derek looked at Dad desperately. Tell them I was just doing what you taught me. Tell them about the schemes, the tax dodging, all of it. And there it was. In his panic, Derek had just implicated Dad in everything. Dad's face went white, then red, then a dangerous purple. You stupid boy, he said quietly. Mr. Mitchell. Jennifer Chen stepped out from behind the crowd. I'd asked her to come to witness everything. I'm Ms. Mitchell's attorney. I think we should discuss this privately. Who the hell are you? Dad started toward her, but stopped when two uniformed officers appeared beside her. We're here about a vandalism report. Officer Daniels said the same tired-looking woman who'd taken my initial report. But it seems there's quite a bit more going on. The rest happened quickly. Derek was escorted to a police car still shouting about how I'd ruined everything, how I was nothing, how this was all my fault. Dad went with them voluntarily, his face aged 10 years in 10 minutes. The relatives dispersed into gossiping clusters, the reunion effectively over. Mom sat at a picnic table surrounded by her sisters crying, but somehow looking lighter than she had in years. I'm sorry, I told her. Don't, she said firmly. Don't you dare apologize for telling the truth. Sarah appeared at my elbow, laptop tucked under her arm. I got everything on video, she said quietly. Every word. I looked around at the destroyed reunion, the gossiping relatives, the abandoned food, the Mitchell family legacy in ruins. How do you feel? Sarah asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. 37 years of humiliation, of being Tommy the Turtle, of accepting cruelty as love, of making myself small so others could feel big. All of it ending in a park pavilion with grocery store potato salad and relatives taking photos to post on Facebook. Free, I said, and meant it. The aftermath was both messier and cleaner than I'd expected. Derek was charged with felony theft, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and vandalism. The vandalism was minor compared to the rest, but it was what had started everything, so there was poetry in it being on the list. Dad was charged as an accessory, though his lawyer, not Jennifer Chen, who was firmly Team Mom, now managed to plea bargain it down to financial penalties and probation. Turns out Dad really hadn't known the extent of Derek's theft, though he'd definitely known about and encouraged the general philosophy of taking what's yours. The trust was restructured. With Derek disqualified and Dad's portion reduced by legal penalties, Mom and I ended up with control. We hired an actual professional management company, no family involvement. Mom moved to a smaller house near her sisters, finally free to be herself without Dad's constant judgment. They're still technically married, but Dad lives in a retirement community, now his kingdom reduced to a one-bedroom apartment and weekly poker games where the stakes are nickels and everyone cheats. Derek spent 6 months in county jail and got 5 years probation. He has to pay restitution, $347,000 when everything was tallied up. He works at a used car lot now, the kind with inflatable tube men and no credit, no problem signs. His high school buddies don't come around anymore. Turns out they were only interested in the Derek who bought rounds and had a boat, not the Derek who lived in a studio apartment and took the bus. But the real aftermath, the one that matters, is quieter. Mom and I have dinner every Sunday now. Real dinner where we talk about real things. She's in therapy processing 45 years of marriage to a narcissist and enabling a sociopath son. She's taking pottery classes of all things. I like making something that's just mine, she told me. Something that has to be handled with care or it breaks. Sarah and I are trying for kids again. The money from the trust restructuring cleared our debts and gave us enough for the fertility treatments insurance won't cover. The doctor's optimistic. Sarah's already planning how to raise kids who know their worth from day one, who never have to make themselves small, who understand that love isn't supposed to hurt. I'm in therapy too. Turns out 37 years of gaslighting and emotional abuse leaves marks even when the bruises don't show. My therapist, Dr. Kim, says I have PTSD, which seemed dramatic until she explained that sustained psychological abuse is trauma, that my nervous system spent decades in fight or flight mode, that my body kept the score even when my mind tried to forget. You were in survival mode for 37 years, she told me. It's going to take time to convince your body the war's over. She's right. I still flinch when someone raises their voice. I still apologize too much. I still have dreams where I'm at that reunion, but instead of speaking up, I sit down, stay quiet, let Derek's toast finish, and Dad's speech continue, and the Mitchell legacy roll on unchallenged. But I also have dreams where I'm at the reunion, and everything happens exactly as it did, where I stand up, speak truth, watch the empire crumble, where I choose justice over peace, truth over comfort, myself over them. Those dreams don't feel like dreams, they feel like memories, because they are. Last week I ran into Derek at a gas station. He was pumping gas into a beaten-up Corolla wearing a polo shirt with the used car lot's logo. He saw me, started to sneer, then stopped. Something in my face maybe, or maybe just the exhaustion of maintaining hatred. Tommy are, he said. Derek, I said. We stood there, two brothers who'd never really been brothers, in the fluorescent light of a Shell station at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. I blamed you for a long time, he said finally, for ruining everything. I know. But it wasn't you, was it? It was me. It was always me. I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. Dad visits sometimes, he said. Tells me I'm still his son, still a Mitchell man. What do you tell him? Derek laughed, but it wasn't mean this time. Just tired. I tell him being a Mitchell man is what got me here. Pumping gas at 39, paying restitution until I'm 60, everyone in town knowing what I did. You could leave town, I suggested. With what money and go where everywhere's got Google Tommy. My name's poison now. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. The part that remembered being 5 years old, Derek 7, playing astronauts in the backyard before everything went wrong. But mostly I just felt empty. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I was finally blessedly indifferent to my brother's pain. I have to go, I said. Sarah's waiting. Yeah, Derek said. Yeah, okay. I started walking to my car, a new one, a Toyota Camry, reliable and paid for with honest money. Tommy, Derek called. I turned. I'm sorry about the coke in your gas tank. That was fucked up. It was the first apology he'd ever given me. 37 years of cruelty, and finally an apology for $3,000 in damage. I know, I said and left. Sarah was indeed waiting when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop working on something for her job. She looked up when I came in, saw something in my face. You okay, Juan Fernandez? I saw Derek. And nothing. He's just sad now, deflated. She closed her laptop, came over, wrapped her arms around me. How do you feel about that? I don't feel anything, I said, and it was true. He's just someone I used to know. That's healthy, she said. That's really healthy, Tom. We stood there in our kitchen, in our house, in our life that we'd built despite everything. The AC hummed, we'd finally fixed it with the restitution money. The refrigerator had our schedules on it, doctor's appointments for fertility treatments, dinner plans with Mom, normal life stuff that felt miraculous in its ordinariness. Oh, Sarah said, pulling back. Your mom called. She wanted to know if we could come early on Sunday. She's making something special. Did she say what? A cake. She's been practicing with that new stand mixer she bought. She said, and I quote, I'm finally learning to make things rise instead of letting them fall. I laughed, really laughed. My mother, the accidental poet. We'll go early, I said. Good. Oh, and Tom, Dr. Kim's office called. They had a cancellation tomorrow if you want to move your appointment up. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I'll take it. Normal life. Appointments and dinners and fixing the AC. No drama, no theft, no vandalism, no public humiliation. Just life lived quietly and honestly. You know what's funny? I spent 37 years being Tommy the Turtle, slow and steady. Turns out that's exactly what won the race. Not through speed or strength or cruelty, but through patience and documentation in the radical act of telling the truth. Derek's serving probation. Dad's in assisted living. Mom's learning pottery. Sarah and I are trying for kids. The Mitchell family reunion tradition died that day in Riverside Park, but something else was born, the possibility of a different kind of family, one built on truth instead of lies, respect instead of fear, love instead of control. I still have the briefcase I bought for the reunion. It sits in our closet empty now, all the documents transferred to the lawyer's office or the police evidence locker. Sarah asked if I wanted to throw it away, but I keep it. Not as a trophy or a reminder of victory, but as proof. Proof that I stood up. Proof that I spoke. Proof that Tommy the Turtle had teeth after all. The moral turpitude clause, that's what really gets me. Dad put it in the trust thinking it would never be needed, that his golden boy would never fall from grace. Instead, it became the trap that caught the very person it was meant to protect. There's probably a lesson in that, something about hubris or justice or the arc of the universe bending toward truth. But I don't need lessons anymore. I don't need metaphors or meaning or moral victories. I just need what I have: a wife who loves me, a mother who finally sees me, a future that's mine to build, and the knowledge that I don't have to be invisible anymore. The other day, a colleague at work asked about my family. It's the kind of small talk I use to dread trying to explain the Mitchell dynamics without revealing the dysfunction. Now I just say, it's complicated but getting better. And it is. It really is. Dr. Kim says healing isn't linear, that there will be setbacks and triggers and days when the old wounds ache like phantom limbs. She's right. Sometimes I catch myself making myself small, apologizing for existing, accepting treatment I don't deserve. Old habits, muscle memory of survival. But more often now I catch myself standing straight, speaking clearly, taking up space, being visible. The last time I saw my father was at a mandatory mediation session for the trust restructuring. He looked older, smaller, like someone had let the air out of him. He kept calling me Tommy even though I'd asked him to call me Tom. "Tommy, you destroyed this family," he said at one point. "No," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "I revealed what was already destroyed. There's a difference." He didn't have an answer for that. For the first time in my life, my father had no comeback, no cruel joke, no dismissive laugh. Just silence. Jennifer Chen told me later that was the moment she knew we'd won. Not when Derek confessed or when the charges were filed, but when my father had no words left. "Bullies rely on their victim's silence," she said. "When you speak, they lose their power." She was right. The Mitchell men, my father and brother, had built their power on the silence of others. Mom's silence about the theft, my silence about the abuse, the family's silence about the dysfunction. We all agreed without ever saying it to protect the Mitchell legacy by never acknowledging what it really was. But silence is exhausting. It takes so much energy to constantly edit yourself, to swallow words, to pretend not to see what's right in front of you. I didn't realize how tired I was until I finally spoke. It was like setting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten I was carrying it. The reunion video Sarah really did record. Everything exists on a flash drive in our safe deposit box. We've never watched it. Sarah says that it's important to remember to have proof it really happened. But I don't need to watch it. I lived it. I stood up in front of 73 people and told the truth about the Mitchell family. That's not something you forget. Sometimes relatives call. The ones from Mom's side, mostly checking in, offering support. Aunt Linda sends cards every few weeks with messages like, "Proud of you," and "You did the right thing." One cousin started a group chat called Mitchell Truth Tellers that's mostly just sharing recipes and photos, but the name itself feels like a small revolution. The relatives from Dad's side are mostly silent. Some actively shun us, which is fine. Uncle Robert sent one email calling me a traitor to the family. I didn't respond. There's no point arguing with people who think loyalty means accepting abuse. But here's the thing I've learned about family. It's not just blood. It's choice. It's the people who see you clearly and choose to stay. Sarah's family has embraced me fully now that they understand what I survived. My mother-in-law, who used to ask careful questions about why we rarely saw my parents, now calls me her son and means it. My father-in-law taught me to change my own oil, said every man should know how to maintain what's his without relying on anyone else. I think he meant more than just cars. We're building our own traditions now. Sunday dinners with mom where no one gets mocked. Holiday celebrations where gifts are given with love, not barbed wire. Board game nights where losing doesn't mean humiliation. Small things maybe, but revolutionary in their normalcy. The IVF is working. Sarah's pregnant 12 weeks now past the danger zone. We haven't told many people yet, savoring the secret, this proof that life goes on, that families can be built on love instead of fear. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl. We don't care. We just know they'll never be Tommy the Turtle or Derek the Destroyer. They'll just be themselves, whoever that turns out to be. Mom cried when we told her. Happy tears, she assured us, though. I think there was grief mixed in grief for the grandmother she could have been if things had been different, if she'd protected me the way she now plans to protect her grandchild. I'll do better, she promised. I'll be better. You already are, I told her, and meant it. Derek doesn't know about the pregnancy. Neither does Dad. They've lost the privilege of our milestones, our joys, our lives. That's the real consequence of their actions, not the jail time or the restitution or the public humiliation, but the empty space where family should be, the silence where celebration should live, the absence that can't be filled with money or mockery or Mitchell legacy mythology. I think about that sometimes, about Derek working at his used car lot, going home to his empty apartment, maybe wondering what his niece or nephew will look like, knowing he'll never know. About Dad in his retirement community playing cards with strangers, his kingdom reduced to stories no one believes about the empire he once ruled. But mostly I don't think about them at all. Mostly I think about the future, about teaching our child to ride a bike without mockery, to make mistakes without shame, to stand up straight, not because they have to prove something, but because they have nothing to hide. I think about Sarah and me growing old together, becoming the kind of parents we needed but didn't have. I think about breaking cycles, healing wounds, building something new on ground that was salted but somehow still grew green. The Honda CR-V runs perfectly now. Carl did excellent work, replaced everything Derek's Coke had corroded. Sometimes when I drive it, I think about that Sunday in March. Derek laughing about teaching me respect, pouring soda into my gas tank like it was the funniest thing in the world. $3,000 in damage because I'd finally pushed back, finally suggested he wasn't perfect, finally refused to be invisible. But that $3,000 was the price of my freedom. Derek thought he was teaching me a lesson about respect. Instead, he taught me I had nothing left to lose. When someone destroys your property for speaking truth, they've shown you their real face. And once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending it's love. Do you regret it? Dr. Kim asked me recently. The reunion, the public confrontation, all of it. No, I said immediately. Then, well, sometimes I regret the timing. Maybe I should have done it sooner, or differently, more privately. But privacy is what allowed it to continue for 37 years. Privacy protected them, not me. And the public nature of it made it real, I said. Made it undeniable. 73 witnesses. Can't gaslight 73 people. She smiled at that. No, you can't. Though I bet Derek tried. He did try, actually. For weeks after, he called relatives, spun stories, tried to convince them I'd manipulated everything, that the documents were forged, that Mom was confused, that Dad was innocent. But 73 people had seen his face when I'd pulled out the evidence. They'd heard his confession, his admission that he'd taken what he felt he was owed. They'd watched him lunge at me, held back only by cousins who'd finally had enough. You can't unsee that either. Last month was the one-year anniversary of the reunion, what would have been the 41st Mitchell family reunion if the 40th hadn't ended in handcuffs and cease and desist letters. A few relatives suggested getting together anyway, minus Derek and Dad, but Mom declined for all of us. We need new traditions, she said, ones that don't come with 40 years of baggage. So instead, Sarah and Mom and I went to the beach. Just the three of us, no extended family, no speeches, no performance. We ate sandwiches and watched the waves and didn't talk about Derek or Dad or the Mitchell legacy at all. We talked about the baby, about Mom's pottery class, about Sarah's promotion at work, about my new project managing a database upgrade that would have bored Derek to tears but fascinated Sarah and made Mom proud. You know what I realize, Mom said as the sun set. I spent 45 years in that family, and this is the first time I felt like I actually have one. I knew what she meant. The Mitchell family, the one Dad had built and Derek had inherited, wasn't really a family at all. It was a hierarchy, a power structure, a decades-long performance of dominance and submission. What we had now, Mom and Sarah and me and the baby growing inside Sarah, this was family. Chosen, careful kind. I love you, Mom. I said the words easier now than they'd ever been when saying them might have been seen as weakness. I love you too, Tommy, she said, then caught herself. Tom, I love you, Tom. The name change mattered. Tommy was the turtle, the victim, the family joke. Tom was the man who'd stood up at a family reunion with a briefcase full of evidence and brought down an empire built on lies. Tom was the husband Sarah chose, the son Mom finally saw clearly, the father our child would know. Tom was who I'd always been underneath the Tommy that Derek and Dad had tried to create. The sun set over the ocean, painting everything gold. Sarah's hand found mine, her wedding ring warm from the sun. Mom was sketching the scene in a notebook she'd bought for her art classes. The waves came in and out, constant and patient, wearing down rocks into sand, proving that soft things could destroy hard things given enough time. You know what the best revenge is? Sarah asked suddenly. Living well, I guess, because that's what everyone says. No, she said. It's living truthfully. Derek and your dad, they'll always have to lie now. To themselves, to others, about what they did and who they are. But we get to live in truth. We get to be exactly who we are. No performance, no pretense. She was right, of course. Sarah usually is. The truth is I won. Not because Derek went to jail or Dad lost his kingdom or the trust got restructured in my favor. I won because I'm free. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the exhaustion of pretending. Free from the 37-year performance of being less than I am so they could feel like more. The baby kicks now. We felt it for the first time last week, this flutter of life that Sarah and I created that will never know the Mitchell family curse of silence and shame. Sometimes I put my hand on Sarah's stomach and tell the baby stories, not about Derek or Dad or the reunion, but about the beach and the waves and Grandma's pottery and all the beautiful, ordinary things that make a life worth living. You're going to be so loved, I tell them, so seen, so valued just for being yourself. Sarah says the baby always kicks when I talk, like they recognize my voice, like they know they're safe. I choose to believe that's true, that somehow across the barrier of skin and fluid and time, our child knows they're coming into a family that broke itself apart and rebuilt into something better. The Mitchell legacy isn't dead exactly. It evolved. Where it used to mean power and cruelty and taking what you want now, it means truth and courage and protecting what matters. Mom and I are still Mitchells after all. We kept the name but changed its meaning. And Derek's still a Mitchell too, still clinging to Dad's definition of what that means, even as it destroyed his life. But that's his choice, his burden. I spent 37 years carrying the weight of being the wrong kind of Mitchell. I won't spend another minute carrying Derek's. You know what, I haven't thought about that nickname Tommy the Turtle in months. It used to echo in my head, Derek's voice on repeat, reminding me I was slow and scared and worthless. But turtles are actually fascinating creatures. They carry their homes on their backs, self-sufficient and protected. They live for decades, sometimes centuries, patient and persistent. They survive what would destroy other creatures. And when threatened, they don't run. They don't fight. They simply retreat into their shells and wait for danger to pass. It's not cowardice, it's strategy. It's survival. I survived 37 years in that family by being exactly what they mocked me for, being slow, careful, observant. I gathered evidence like a turtle gathers years, slowly, steadily, until I had enough to matter. And when the time came, I didn't retreat into my shell. I stood up at that reunion and spoke truth into a microphone while 73 people watched a dynasty fall. If that makes me Tommy the Turtle, I'll take it. It's better than being Derek the Destroyer sitting in a used car lot, destroyed by his own destruction. It's better than being Dad the King dethroned and alone ruling nothing but memories that get smaller every day. Sarah just came in to tell me dinner's ready. She made that pasta dish, I love, the one with sun-dried tomatoes that she learned from her grandmother. We'll eat at our kitchen table in our house, in our life that we build honestly. No one will mock anyone. No one will keep score of who deserves what. No one will pour Coke in anyone's gas tank to teach them about respect. It's a small life, maybe, a quiet life. The kind of life Derek would call boring, Dad would call weak, the old, me would have apologized for wanting. But it's mine, ours real. And that's enough, more than enough. That's everything.